everybody from wherever you're listening from. Guys, this is Freedom Church. This is Maggie Herbert. I'm here with my husband, Kai Herbert, and we're here with the pastors from the Freedom Raleigh location, Pastors Josh and Rose, and we're just going to talk. There he is. we're just going to talk about relationships. We had our podcast come out last week, and we talked about singleness and dating, and that was a great message from Pastor Josh. This week, we had Pastor Rose preach. Rose, do you just want to go over a little bit about what you talked about?
Sure.
For anyone that wasn't in the room.
Yeah, we're in this relationship series right now, and it means that we have the really fun opportunity to unpack what the Bible actually says about relationships. I think that the truth is, through the years, it's become a little bit messy. What does the Bible say? Not just what do churches tell you that the Bible says, or what have we come to understand through the years of it being passed from generation to generation. What does the Bible say about men and women, how they should work together and what we bring to one another, and how we create balanced relationships in that kind of partnership. And so, the message on Sunday as a part of that series really is unpacking how should men and women work together? What do they each bring to the table? And I feel like, we're going to have to say this all the way through this series, but there are so many generalizations we can make. Some of those generalizations we fit into, some of them we don't, and that's okay. But what's God's plan? That's what we want to come back to as a church again and again in Freedom, is what is God's plan? What does God's word say? What is God's instruction to us? Not just our preference or what we saw modeled to us, but actually God's best is really what we want to be speaking out of. So that's what we did on Sunday.
I love that this is a very, they're all true, but this is a really truthful series. I love it. We're really bringing the truth to Raleigh, and I feel like it's really going to make a difference. But I love that it's backed by the Bible. Yeah, it's great. You wouldn't want anything else. But come on.
Yeah, I think it is so relevant in today's age what we're talking about, especially with relationships and stuff. But I, just listening to your message this past Sunday, I kind of want to talk about what it means to be equally yoked, what it means to really have the same belief, the same foundation, and how important it is to really have that. Because I've seen relationships where one person is so on fire for God and really trying to get further in their faith, further down the line in their faith, but there's one person that's just stagnant, still not really believing in the faith, or they believe it, just not to the degree of somebody else. And I guess I just kind of want to hear you guys' opinions on that.
Yeah, good. It's really interesting because we were both raised in Christian homes. But we probably had modeled to us different forms of what living out that Christianity looked like. And that difference didn't mean we were incompatible, but it did mean that change had to happen. Yeah. And I think sometimes when we talk about being unequally yoked, it's very slim chance that you're going to meet somebody and fall in love with somebody and they've had the exact same upbringing and the exact same tone around the church and the exact same involvement and equipping and all that. But I think what it really comes down to is desire. Yeah. Do you want that? And I think so often being equally yoked comes down to are you equally willing? Yeah. Are you equally willing to pursue Jesus? Are you equally willing to put him first? Josh was raised in a church where every single Sunday, the whole family goes to church. It is a priority for them. It's a point of celebration in their household. And I didn't have that same experience. So it was more like church is a part of what we do, but it wasn't the same as how he was raised. I had within me, though, I think even without knowing it sometimes, a willingness, I wanted that. Yeah. And I think that in that regard, we were equally yoked. My experience looked different. My understanding of the Bible looked different. My relationship with the church looked different when we started going out. But our hope in the church, our desire for the future of, what Jesus wants to do in his kingdom and all of that, kind of, it was the same. I didn't even realize it at the time, but I feel like being around him and seeing what was possible outside of what I've experienced, it kind of stirred up a willingness in me really early on to be I want to see that. I want to do that. And I think that sometimes when we talk about new relationships, we got to not just ask, where are you at now? But I think we've got to ask, what's your vision for, how do you see yourself being involved in Jesus' plan for your life in the future? How do you see yourself being involved in the church in the future, I think we got to just think about not only do you read your Bible now, but like, what do you want? Do you want to be somebody who grows? Are you hungry to change? Because I think that in that regard, we were equally hungry. We just weren't equally experienced. And so we got to be careful that we don't rule somebody out based on their lack of experience if they have a desire there to grow and change. And I know that he was the one who was experienced and equipped. I was the one who was like kind of flying blind, but like, oh no, I love this and I'm excited about it. So it doesn't always look the same for everybody, but I think the yoke is actually a willingness and a desire for God's kingdom.
Yeah, one of the things I'd add as well is that we often use it, and I taught this on the Sunday when I was talking about navigating relationships, often in the context of getting together with someone, starting a relationship, but actually being yoked is something you need to constantly come back to and have an ongoing conversation with. Are we yoked? Are we like going in the same direction? Because I think it's possible to start out in the same place and then you end up that somehow you drifted. And the word division means two visions. And it's like, if you start getting two oxen with two different visions of where they should be going, that's going to cause all kinds of tension and difficulty. So what you need to do is keep coming back to vision, because also what the vision that we had as, you know, when we're getting together as young teenagers is like so different from the vision that we need now as pastors, as parents. So we need to have these ongoing conversations. So it's like, are we equally yoked, for example, with our finances? And it's like, right, I've got a vision, like we need to be saving up for this, but my partner is not equally yoked. She's spending all this money in this direction, and it's causing tension because we're unequally yoked. And we start going in different directions. It causes tension, problems, frustrations. That could be the same with our sex life as well. It's like, do we have a situation where it's like we're equally yoked on this? We've got the same vision. I know so many relationships, it causes problems when there is a different vision of what that sex life should look like. And so then you've got, again, just this pulling apart. And we know, sadly, so many relationships end up in such where the two partners have become separated. I mean, that's literally the word that they use, but they were originally as one. But it started to happen because they didn't have these ongoing conversations about, are we going in the right direction? Are we yoked together? Are we going to continue on the same path? What's important to me? What's important to you? We started doing this around finances years ago, and it was transformational for us to have. Are we on the same page with our finances? What's the vision?
Can I just say one thing on that? Because I was studying this the other day. Hebrews 2 says this: we must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so that we do not drift away. And I think the reality of humans is that what's natural is to drift. It's not natural to stay true to the course and follow unrelentingly. And what the flesh does, the flesh actually drifts. And so when we lead ourselves back to the vision, whether that's the vision for our marriage, the vision for, you know, how I follow Jesus, the vision for how I spend my money. We have to remind ourselves, because the Bible says it itself, you got to pay attention so that you don't drift. And that drift is literally like a boat being carried by the current. Our human imaginations carry us all kinds of different ways, but our responsibility is to come back to the vision. And so I think that's one of the most important things you can do in a marriage is keep coming back to the vision. Every anniversary we sit down, and maybe not intentionally, but we're like, what do you want this year? You know, is it the same as what you wanted last year? Where are we going? What's going well? How can we do better in some things? We've got to make sure that the vision is through our conversation, because otherwise people drift. And that's, I think, sometimes how relationships become so painful, is that two people drifted and they didn't pay attention to what they're trying to build. And naturally the waves took them somewhere else. And it's a sad thing to see, but it's also avoidable if you just keep coming back to like, what's the vision? What are we wanting? Where are we hoping to go? And I think sometimes that willingness to take you back to your original question is like, that's the yoke. Like, I want that. I want to go in the same direction as him. We work at that. It doesn't happen by accident, but you make sure that you keep the vision clear and you run towards it.
What you were saying earlier about just the beginning of that answer reminded me when Kai and I, before we were married, I remember I was thinking about that I don't want to judge Kai based off of like his lack of resources, because literally where Kai was at the time, where he didn't have any community, he didn't have any accountability, he didn't even have the option to be in a church community or to like have the same vision as me. So he was where I was at just months before.
Right.
But it was like, okay, what are you going to do when you're presented with the opportunity to have this vision? Are you going to have the same one as me? And it was just so awesome because God, but I feel like, I don't know if it's just with women or with anyone, but we can kind of want to control, especially if someone like has that vision already. They're running in certain things already. But the other one's kind of like got to catch up a little bit. What's the level of grace versus like, okay, but you do need to be on the same page as me. But like, I understand, like, you know, lack of resources or anything like that. What would you speak to that of someone who's like, okay, I'm here, they're not here, but I like, what's the level of grace versus like,
that's a great question, because one of the things I experienced so much, just to go back to, you know, my background, his background, is Josh and his family called out the potential in me again and again and again. They just never, you know, we joke about this often, but I don't think I prayed out loud in front of his family or anyone for like the first 2 years. It was within me. I just was so kind of caught up in my own insecurity that I hadn't vocalized it yet. And they just kept on kind of giving opportunities, but also like sometimes just directly saying, you can, and you, what's holding you back? That's not God holding you back. It's something else. So I think, you know, to your point about grace, we've got to keep seeing the potential in people. But I was hungry. I was willing. They could see me moving in other areas of my life. They could see me stepping forward. And I think you know a tree by its fruit. So if there's no fruit of change in any area, if somebody is resistant to change, if they are prideful and maybe kind of like above the challenge that they receive, you can also see that in them. So I feel like I was maybe an extreme case of being quite a slow mover, but having some fruit in my life where it was like, she's leading in this area, she's stepping up over here, she has this kind of consuming fear about her voice, and we need to kind of call her through that, versus the relationship situations where he's not moving, nothing's happening, I keep getting promised change and I'm not seeing anything. There is no fruit of like willingness in this life, because at that point, painful though it is, sometimes we have to, you know, the person has to want it for themselves more than you want it for them. And you know, we can believe the best in people as Christians sometimes, but if they're not willing to also participate in the process, it's a pretty tough thing. And you made the point about women. I just want to say that, you know, women, we've got to be so careful, because we've seen this many times. Maybe the female in the relationship is taking a lot of responsibility for a lot of things. She's leading on some things and she's saying, I want my husband to lead. I want my partner to lead. I wish he would step up and do some of these things. And then sometimes he goes on an amazing journey of transformation and does start to step up. And she's like, hey, I don't know if I like this anymore. Like, I don't know if I like the direction that you're taking us in, or, you know, you're kind of taking my role here. And so if we really want it, we've got to make sure that we can also like get out of the way and let somebody develop in the way that they're supposed to develop. Pray for them, support them, encourage them, but not control them, because that can be so dangerous too for relationships.
Yeah, definitely. The only thing I'd just add is that when you're kind of figuring out the vision of like, right, okay, what do we want for this? And there's just got to be a bit of give and take. You know, it can't just be, well, I want this, and well, I see it this way, or that there is absolute and one person that just has to constantly go with what the other wants. I think there's got to be that middle ground, compromise. One of the things as well, like you talked about, you know, how much do we just give grace for that? One of the things that I think, you know, through our relationship through the years that we've done is that when one of us is like, right, I've got a vision and I want to change in this way, is that we don't try and put our conviction on the other person. We say, hey, I feel called to do this and I'm going to make these changes and I want to let you know, I want to be accountable. Now, what we found is that often brings inspiration to the other person to say, oh, actually, maybe I'll do something like that as well. I'm going to change this area or I'm going to grow in it. But we don't put it on the other person to say, you should do this as well with me, because often I think that it doesn't work out well. It's like that a person needs their own conviction of change. And obviously you want them to get that for sure. And sometimes it's worth asking the questions like, do you see anything, or is there anything that you want to grow in? And sometimes like, no, not really. Don't really have that in me at the moment for, I don't know, so let's use health as an example. That I don't really have a conviction about that, or it's not really something I want to prioritize right now. But often when one person, and if you're two as one, is like one person starts to run forward, it starts to make the other think, actually, I need to make some changes too. But I would recommend for people listening to this, don't enforce what you have and your convictions on the other person, because I don't think that's healthy or helpful.
I've definitely been in situations we've been in situations where Maggie will like have a conviction and then I won't. Like I'll just be sitting there. I'm like, I don't have that conviction yet. Like it's not time for me to have that conviction. But the truth of the matter is, like, as I saw Maggie progressing in certain areas, and I see her like getting better, I see her spirit getting fuller, like she just becoming a different person. If you are truly equally yoked, I feel like you'll just ultimately want to follow in those footsteps, whether it's like the woman doing it or the man doing it. I think that there's just something true about just wanting to get better. And I think that it does take one person to step out in that and getting better. And naturally, like somebody would just follow that. Like somebody would just be like, dang, I want to get better as well. But one thing that I also want to kind of talk about with like vision is that vision is so relevant. Like it is so important to have vision. But I also think there's an importance of having like wise counsel in your background, like just having people be able to like speak into your lives, because there was a point in time where Maggie and I was like, you know, we need to change. We need to change how we're living. We need to change how we're acting. And we knew that we had that desire, and that fire and like spark was lit from us wanting. Want was there, but we needed to have somebody speak into our lives. And I think that's super important to have, because before it was just like Maggie and I trying to figure things out. But then like when we had Ashton and Maren, or like people like Hannah and Noah speak into our relationship, speaking into our lives, it actually changed the way that we thought about things, and it changed the way that we operated in life. And we started to realize, oh, like the vision that we had before can't just be like Kai's vision or Maggie's vision. It has to be like Kai and Maggie's vision now, because we became one and we became united through marriage. And so I guess my question to all of that is like, how would you go about like, what would you say about that? Like how important is it to like really just have that counsel, like people speaking into your life that have already been through some of those marriage things?
Oh my goodness, so important. It's so important. We can't do life alone, and it is such an important thing to have people in your corner, in your life, who are going to pray for you, who've been there before you. Oh man, I wish I could encourage, every person to like do this, do it, because so many people are like very like take it or leave it, and I often think about how people often look at it as advice rather than counsel. So advice you can take or leave. Counsel comes with more authority and weight, and it's like, actually, I'm going to listen because there's an authority that it comes with. Where I think advice is like, oh, well, I'll see if I like it. And it's like when it's counsel, it's like, okay, I'm actually going to submit. And we know that the principles of God, we see this in 1 Peter 5, is that when you humble yourself, God will lift you up. It's like, if you want to be blessed by God, it's like humility and the willingness to listen to others is key on that journey of that. And so I would encourage every person, like, get someone that is speaking into your life, because we all think we can figure out in our own strength, but it just ends up with us making lots of mistakes that we could have avoided. And I often think, I see maybe someone making a decision, or you think, oh man, I wish that you had just come and spoken to me, spoken to someone, had a leader in your life, that you were willing to allow them to speak in. But humans, we are innately prideful, and we don't want people to speak in for the most part. And so then we avoid those conversations. and then we make those mistakes. And it's like, actually, I think a healthy model for relationships is just having someone of counsel that you trust, that's got a heart for you, that's going to pray for you. I'm not talking about control or manipulation. Those are the worst forms of what this could be. But I think in a healthy community like ours, that doesn't really exist. It's only for, people that are for you and they want to stand with you, to be having someone in your life
Real
like that.
quick, I just want to say, you mentioned Ashton Moore and for anyone who doesn't know who that is, there are leaders, but also our friends. So I think it's really important to ask people that aren't just your friends, because people that have walked through it before, and they, like, Ashton and Moore are a few years older than us, but they're like, we would consider the people that, like, we would go to for something. They're only a couple years older than us, but they've walked through like a lot longer of marriage than us. They've walked through the things that we would go to them for, rather than being on the same level as us. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh my gosh, they're so much better than us, but they have the wisdom where we can submit to that and say, like, whether we understand it or not, we trust their judgment. We trust their guidance on that. And I think it's important not to just like ask your friends who might be going through the same exact thing, because nobody knows what they're doing. And to ask people that have like been through it, and they can give you wise counsel and stuff.
Can I just say on that, I think that actually we're in a really good spot. Like, if I can just put a positive spin on everything we're talking about, I think we as a generation are more open to like input, maybe, than other generations. If I think about like my grandparents' generation or even my parents' generation, I think there were lots of things that were unsaid or, maybe not processed. And we now are in a world where we understand the value of things like counseling, or, there's a therapy culture, or a lot of us are being spoken into every day just through our scroll. Like, we're being spoken into by the people we choose to follow, by the things we choose to subscribe to, the podcasts we follow. The key thing here is like, can people talk back to you? Because you might be able to, find information, but are you part of a conversation? I think that's what makes the difference. Is we're all absorbing content all the time that's shaping the way we think, or maybe improving things even. It's not bad. But where can somebody ask you a question? Where can somebody actually speak into your life? You're not just tuning into a channel, you're sitting down around a table. I think that's what makes a big difference. And the truth is, there's lots of external voices shaping us, and we don't know the full picture. Whereas the amazing thing about the church is nobody's perfect, but you get to see some real people with real relationships, for example, who really are figuring it out 3 steps ahead of us. And you get to go and learn from them. Like, what a privilege that is to have relationships that can be that fruitful.
And I was like, when I first was getting into the church, I was coming off of a very like independent lifestyle. And I just remember thinking in my head, before I had the knowledge that I have today, I was like, I don't need anybody speaking into my relationship. Like, I don't need anybody, And then I would go back to my friends who are like also going through the same things that I'm going through, and I'm like, to them. And now how different the advice that I got from them is versus like having wise counsel. And it's just so important, I feel like, to just like have people speaking into your life, because it actually changed the way that I think about things, and it changed my outlook on things. So I think it's super important to have people with wisdom who have already walked those things, and they've done it in a very like healthy way. I think it really just kind of boils down to the simple fact of like, there's worldly advice, and then there's like healthy like Christian advice that are just like, it's just something about it that's just so different. And I'm just super thankful that I've come across people who are walking in this with like a mindset of like, Christ is my foundation, and this is what it's actually supposed to look like, because it's benefited Maggie and I so much.
That's good.
I think something that I also had to learn was go to the people that you go for counsel with your problems. Don't go to your friends, because then it sounds like you're being dishonoring to your partner. Because like, I feel like before I understood that, I would not be talking bad about Kai, but I'd be like, oh, Kai doing this again. And it sounds like you're dishonoring Kai. It's like your friends are going to be biased to your perspective. Not that they have to be, they could love Kai, but they're only hearing your side. And they're not necessarily saying, oh, do this or do that. That's so bad. But they are saying, oh, that's so valid. And you're sitting in how you feel.
Right.
Whereas I've noticed when I'm going to Marin, who's been leading me in ways, she actually corrects me a lot of the time. It doesn't just validate everything I feel. I'm like, but also she's guided me in saying, like, protect your husband's character because, like, that's important. If there's little slip-ups, go to the people that you trust of, like, how can I grow in this and how can I be better versus just venting to your friends.
So true.
But
yeah, I honestly just I've been loving this series. I've been loving the relationship series, and I love the ways that we're diving in on things that are super important that don't get talked about a lot in churches. And so I love the fact that we get to really sit down and dwell in like the process of learning how to operate better in your relationships, better in your marriages, and things of that nature. And I really feel as though a lot of relationships are going to change because of this. And I feel as though a lot of people are going to come out on the back end of this series and be like, wow, my relationship, my marriage is like 20 times better. So honestly, I just want to say thank you to Pastors Rose and Josh, and really just thank them for, constantly giving us these messages on a Sunday and just taking the time out their day to sit down with us on this podcast.
Come on.
We love our church and we love to do it.
Yeah. And I just wanted to end there. Thank you guys for tuning into this podcast.
Yeah,
and thank you guys for coming along on this journey, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.